Hello everybody, this is an intro you here with yet another short question. Amazingly, these have actually remained relatively short and relatively on script so far, which I wasn't really expecting, but hey, at least it makes for some shorter videos for you guys. So, this entire series is meant to be a series of commonly asked questions, and one of the most commonly asked is where are the servers currently at, specifically in terms of features. And so in this video I'm going to be going through all that for DLU's furthest state that I have seen so far during testing. Now, according to Darwin himself, this is not DLU's furthest state, and actually his original testbed build was more complete in terms of features than anything he's actually produced since. It was just very, very unstable. But this is the most I've seen out of them, and it's probably the most anyone's seen since original alpha, and probably actually overall, because DLU didn't put out much footage until the alpha. There were just a couple of videos out online. Anyway, given I started by saying, hey, I've been on script for most of these, I have now gone completely off script, so let's get back on script right now. So, compared to my video on DLU during the winter testing, following, or rather partway through the rewrite, it's relatively easy to run through the game, since we're actually allowed to do it this time. So in the immortal words of Mario, let's go. You wake up on the Venture Explorer. You can accept Jet's first mission to move. You can run about, smash crates, and receive the drops from the crates, and the crates demonstrate something of the correct delay before respawning, which is nice. It means that they're correctly being despawned by the server. Also, I thought at this stage when writing the script. I'm less certain of this, but we'll come and talk about that later. It also gives you some information about what you can expect from the spawning and despawning of enemies later on, which will hopefully be far more obvious than the crates. You run further on, and unlike in the winter testing event, we have evidence that unlocking your imagination works. From memory, I believe also that unlike the winter event, we didn't get the imagination orbs spawning before you'd unlocked them, which was sort of one of the key pieces of evidence I used to suggest that in the winter event, perhaps server-side imagination wasn't actually fully working correctly, and it wasn't solely that unlocking your imagination didn't fit within particular worlds. Anyway, as with pretty much every major project, the plaques and binocular stands work too. Achievements were still somewhat buggy at this stage, but we'll get onto that a little bit more later when discussing the heart flags. So, whilst in DLU's previous testing phase, the way you got up to Skylane was using their favourite hack of fire hydrants, as they hadn't made the transition to using the quick build fan. However, by the time of DLU's Halloween update in 2018, the quick build fan to Skylane was up and running. Skylane then directs you to build a ship to escape, which you can do. Fortunately, it was teased in DLU's first ever alpha video, and I'm pretty certain it was possible in the original alpha, so I'd be concerned if you couldn't. DLU also demonstrated in this last Halloween test a small client mod, which, given that I mentioned previously about the winter testing being the first large-scale client modding, aside from LCDRU's TCP UDP hack, that's sort of not true. This is a very, very small hack which replaces the NIF file. It's something you can do fairly easily with an unpacked client, and I mapped around with later on LCDRU. But they swapped the minifigure model that the game uses as a default to the skeleton model. I spent some time mucking around with this, and it turns out the skeletons work a lot better than Brick Fury, who, interestingly, when you swap the character model for his, appears spawned on his side for some reason. And, of course, it's brilliant seeing every character in the game being a sideways Brick Fury. Speaking of him, I wonder if Brick Fury was originally meant to be a pun of Nick Fury. It seems too strong a similarity to be coincidence, given that that Brick Fury is also where we get one of the other most obvious pop culture references in the entire game, which is I love the smell of Maelstrom in the morning. You arrive in a Avant Garden successfully, and like the good explorer you are, you pick up the heart flag hidden behind the launch pad. Interestingly for you though, this instantly gives you the one extra health it should do. Also, when you first arrive, you have a problem actually spawning in on the launch pad properly, but when you die from there on in, you spawn in the correct place. I suspect this was due to DLU having problems with the transitions between worlds, leading them to simply update people's coordinates, probably/possibly to 000, because they wanted, as the main thing they were going to get out of this, to demonstrate AI, and how can you demonstrate AI if there's a glitch and everyone's stuck on Venture Explorer? Either way, since you respawn correctly from there on in, that seems to not actually be a problem with their code. It seems to just be a hack. they did because of possibly some other problems they may have had. And speaking of spawning in the right place, that was something the winter testing event decided to do without, a fact I actually forgot to mention in that video. You then see stromlings, which is always a good sign in a server, but thanks to the developer Matt, you see something of a bad sign. They're all moving. This also means that the devs haven't simply implemented the attacking AI, they've also got idling down. And you should also note that the smashables, which should spawn as quick build when broken, aren't properly implemented, as both the smashable and the quick build spawn in by default. This is the first hint that what I said earlier about the crates appearing to respawn with the correct timing may not actually be correct, because this implies something's not going quite right with smashables being smashed on the server. The next thing you notice about the AI is that it is really laggy. This isn't a complaint, and it's one of the reasons why DLU doesn't just open its servers right away, but yeah, very, very laggy enemies. The downside of which is that your position in their database is not updated often enough to keep track of where you actually are in real time, and so they're able to hit you simply by attacking where you were rather than where you are. This also goes for after you've respawned. That's something of a petty point, because DLU isn't claiming to have a lag-free server. That's one of the reasons they're doing their current rewrite. But a less petty point is that they don't actually observe the original LU AI. So these stromlings can run up objects steep enough that the player needs to jump them and can safely enter areas they shouldn't be able to, although often/occasionally they teleport out afterwards. Respawns also seem way too fast, I began to notice at this stage, certainly based off my experience with LCDRU, so I suspect that, as I've been sort of hinting at throughout this, DLU aren't actually properly despawning the enemies, they're just allowing the client-side despawn and then respawn effects to handle them, or dropping the items from the client. I've just written in the script despawn respawn effect, and I haven't actually explained that anywhere. The despawn respawn effect is what I call when you've got smashables implemented but you don't have proper despawning implemented. This means is that when you attack your thing and when you smash this particular smashable object, your client knows that it's meant to be smashed. It gets a signal from the server saying, hey, you smashed this thing, good work. It gets the items dropped, and everything gets sent to the server correctly. However, the item isn't then despawned after it's smashed, and so a little while later the game's just like, wait a second, there was a thing there. I don't know what happened to it, let's maybe just put it back. And so you can get all the correct events being sent to the server required for smashables and stuff like that, but you don't actually get despawning of the item, which leads to significantly higher than normal respawn times, because the correct signals are sent to the server with this glitch, but the server just doesn't respond by correctly despawning the item. After you relog, however, you should note that your hearts return to the number they should originally have been. So when I mentioned we'd come back to the achievements thing, we've noticed that just collecting a single heart flag will instantly give you the heart achievement, which gives you the extra heart point, but that this doesn't remain after you relog. Another thing that doesn't remain after you relog is the flags you have actually collected. And so overall, we've got evidence of some very interesting progress. But on a rethink and a rewatch of the footage, there are problems with the AI that no one actually noticed at the time, really. I mean, I'm sure proper people did. Because of the lag, which is quite interesting, because when LCDR first released footage of his Spider Queen boss fight, people actually really quickly picked up on the fact that it had broken AI, aside from the obvious breaks to the AI, which, quite honestly, I never would have picked up. I'm adding this after the fact, as I was using the structure from the winter testing server status script and missed out a couple of things. Firstly, vendors do work in this version of DLU, if they're also sometimes extremely glitchy. And secondly, the missions extend up to smashing and rebuilding the sentries, which you can rebuild because DLU smashable rebuilds don't work. And stupidly, I never actually tested the shield effect on DLU, which LCDRU does have problems with. It's one of the missions from Beck, but I never got that far on DLU, and I never tested it, so I don't know about that one. If anyone does, I'd be interested in hearing whether or not you were able to get the shield offhand effects to work. So, that all said, you know the drill. Like and subscribe to developer channels, they'll be in the description, and I will see you around for another video at some point, maybe, because I'm organised. Woo. I've been Ninja, thank you for listening.